whoever controls the history controls the present, but they also control the future. What if the story that the new lover brought, what if it's not true?
I'm so glad this happens. Actually, I was invited several times to have a conversation with you, and it never would happen because, I don't know, it was in Germany, it was wherever. Mm-hmm. Now you came to my country, to mm-hmm. Austria. We are here next to Salzburg, the city of Mozart, but also very near to Braunau, which is a dark history, a dark German and Austrian history. And I think that's not a coincidence that we meet here in this place. I was brought up with the spirit of Mozart, and I was brought up in an artist home. So, mm-hmm. But also with these other rather dark energies. And I came here and I wanted to meet you actually in another room, in a room of love, forgiveness, a female room. Mm-hmm. And you agreed to that, and I'm very, very happy. So yes, I let you say something to that topic that I choose.
Well, many people have heard me say that love is the only answer, and it sounds like a slogan, rather trite or superficial. But in reality, it is the only way that Germany can be healed, and it's the only way that Germany can ever be free. So I'm very well aware that we are not in Germany now, and that we are in Austria. But when people ask me to compare and contrast, it is not possible for me to see two nations. I cannot see that from the perspective that I must live in. Deutschtum exists without a border between. So that I'm not speaking politically, but I'm speaking from the standpoint of the heart. I cannot see two peoples. It's not possible for me to do that. So, but I am very glad that we could do this, and I'm glad I was able to come to you. Austria has a special background and meaning for me. So wherever you would like to go, I'm ready for you.
Perhaps we can pick up that we are meeting here at somehow a neutral territory, which is very special, Austria. Mm-hmm. And you came here being an American, mm-hmm. and I'm sitting here coming from a Belgian mother, mm-hmm. who married the enemy, an Austrian. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the perfect combination that it takes to dive in, mm-hmm. and to feel what's the problem here. And when I thought of how would I describe it, I would say, well, it's a sort of yearning, of longing of the Germans to be loved, and in the same way, so much fear of it, the rejection of love, because of this fear.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a good way to put it. Even though, when I land in Munich or wherever, the border police say, "Why are you here? Where are you going?" And of course, I must say I'm an academic who studies international economics, and then they say, "Oh, fine, you can go." But that's not the way I view things. I don't view anything as an academic. And so when I view the problem in Germany, and I don't think the Germans are aware of the problem. I don't think they know how to solve the problem, because I don't think they can see it clearly. They have, it is hidden from them. But as I look at it from the way that I must see everything, Germany is like a young Frau, a young woman who was attractive, was naive, and who was full of idealism, but was unfocused. And so the young woman fell in love. And the book Constance's Child is a love story, and it's a love story about a young woman who was very naive, very simple, who lived in an idealistic world. She didn't know men, she didn't know how the world worked. She sat at her father's side in a Stammtisch, and she only heard secondhand about things. But she was in love, and Germany as a nation was in love. Constanze wasn't in love with a man, but she was in love with a way of life. And the man represented the way of life. And he was a defender of a way of life. And of course, he was an Austrian man at heart. That's his mannerisms, his way of approaching things was Austrian more than it was German. So I look at Germany's problem as being a young Frau, a Fräulein in a way, in that sense, who fell in love and gave herself totally and completely. And her trust was absolute. It never dawned on her that anything could go wrong. And so in her idealism, she said, I am yours. I don't know how to pronounce it. Ihre Getreue, I am devoted to you.
Ich bin dir treu ergeben.
Yeah. And, but she never allowed herself, Germany in the collective, never allowed herself to think that something could really go wrong, or that maybe it wouldn't work out. And so, and then at the end, not only did it go wrong, but it appeared that the one that she loved so much, so dearly, betrayed her. Well, nothing is, of course, more horrifying for a young girl than to give herself fully and completely, without reservation, and then to find out that you were betrayed. Not that the person left for another person, but that you were betrayed. The person was not sincere. They weren't genuine. They didn't really love you in the way you love them. And so you had given yourself foolishly and openly and completely, and all of a sudden it collapses. So now, where do you turn? Well, there's a new lover in the neighborhood. The conqueror, the one who is now everywhere, the British, the Americans, the French, the Russians, from all over, from 50 different, and they're everywhere. And they have chocolate, and they have Coca-Cola, and they have a warm bed, and they have, you don't love them, but you need them. And they have a story to tell. They come with a story, and the story is complete. And that was, young Frau, you have been betrayed by a monster. It's not that you were betrayed by a man who fell out of love with you, but you were betrayed by a monster who hated you always. He always hated, and he wanted to destroy you. And so he tricked you and manipulated you. And so, fine, and now I am here, and I bring to you work and security and food and a warm bed and a shelter and a bathroom, and you can have it all, but now you must love me but she doesn't love them. Okay. So now she simply falls out of love without falling back into love again. And she pretends. She learns to be a pretender. And, you know, this is hard to say because my love for Germans is so great. But German women are attractive in their features and in their formation. They are attractive people. But they always have a little bit of angst in their eyes, behind their eyes. I don't see it as much in Austria, but I see it all the time in Germany. So you have attractive people who are worried about something and they are never able to give themselves freely, ever. You know, this young Frau, when she was in love with her original lover, she would dress pretty, and she had her hair pretty, and she had her makeup pretty, and she wanted to be beautiful for him because she loved everything about him. And he appeared to love her too. But German women don't act that way anymore. They almost go out of their way to not be beautiful. They go out of their way to not be attractive. And then there's that little bit of angst. And you don't see it in other places in Europe. You never see it in America, but you see it in Germany. And so it makes them look just a little different than what they really are, a little less wholesome, a little less free. So I don't think that Germans, since they cannot question the story that was brought by the new lover, okay, they can't question the story. It's offenkundig. If you question the story, you go to prison for 2 years, okay? Even if you're a normal person. But you certainly lose your job, and your neighbors won't speak to you anymore. So the story is absolute, and it was brought by the people who hated everything she was in love with. For 5.5 years, they hated everything, okay? And they not only destroyed in Germany everything and everyone, but they also did a great deal of destruction to Austria and Austrians, okay? So the fact that the story cannot be questioned means that Germans are trapped. They cannot be free because they can't love. And that's why I say to them, love is the only answer. But you must open your heart to love. And they say, no, we cannot do it. You're asking too much from us. Because if we open our hearts to love, we will be betrayed again, and it will hurt so deeply that it's better to live in survival than it is live in betrayal. And so they have, on a scale of 10, Germans live between a 5.5 and a 5.7. But they're satisfied with that because it is relatively risk-free. And German women are the key. Women are always the key. Men are, I know men well, and they're not. Women are the key. The women were the key back in the time when Constanza was a young woman as well. So her mother was a key figure in her life. So unless I can get Germans to agree to trust someone again. Now, Lisa and I get emails all the time from people all over Germany, very few from Austria, but all over Germany. And they say, William, we don't trust the CDU, we don't trust the SPD, we don't trust the Greens, we don't trust anybody in Berlin. We've just given up on all of that, but we trust you, okay? So why do they trust me? Because I come to them and I tell them the truth, and they know it's the truth. It resonates, so that it is true. I said, I love you. And they say, oh, that's impossible. You must be a betrayer. You must be a deceiver. Because why would you love us? We're not lovable. We don't look lovable. We get our hair cut funny. We don't dress in a way that's sexy or feminine. And so no one loves us. And now you love us. And I say, yes, I love you. And I can't help it. I love you passionately. Okay? I am deeply in love with you. No one has ever said that before. But how do we trust you? We tried it. It didn't work. And the pain is still deep, very, very deep. The scar is still open. It hasn't healed yet. Okay? So what I will ask people tonight, I don't know, Dr. Meyer drives me up here in the fog and I say, okay, where am I? I don't know. I could be in Saarland, right? I could be in Görlitz. I have no idea. But I think there will be a few people tonight who will want to hear. But I will tell them, I will ask them a question. And the question is, what if? What if the story that the new lover brought, what if it's not true? And matter of fact, what if it's not just different than the truth? What if it's the opposite of the truth? Now what do we do? Okay, because this is what we've learned in school from kindergarten. It's what reinforced every day. Every time you have social intercourse with anyone, it's reinforced to you. You can't vary even a little bit from left to right without instantly getting that look that freezes you and tells you, you must not think this way. So, offenkundig. The story is sacred. It's like the Bible. But who brought the story? Who brought the story to the young woman who was betrayed? Well, the ones who had hated her and her family and her way of life, hated her for years. And they were jealous, terribly jealous, and they were envious. And so they had all of the hallmarks, all of the traits of somebody who would not tell the truth. But theirs was the only story. And if you wanted the chocolates and you wanted the Coca-Cola and you wanted a warm bed to sleep in, you had to nod your head and say, yes, I believe the story. And we're still nodding our head today and say, but I asked the question, and a professor is allowed to ask it, what if? Now, the main doctors of philosophy both in Austria and in Germany have said for years, for hundreds of years, that history is not a science. It's not an exact science. The hard sciences are exact. What I have learned and how to examine things and how to test and examine, those are real. They actually work. But history, according to some of the great philosophers, is a fiction novel. It's a story that someone makes up and repeats. And there's very little truth in the story. And the story can shift if the power shifts. In essence, whoever's in power controls the story. Whoever controls the history controls the present, but they also control the future because they decide what's right and what's wrong, what's in and what's out, who goes to prison for 3 years and who has freedom and is well associated in their society. So the Germans have questions in their hearts, but they can't ask the questions. So the questions have to remain locked up. They have love in their hearts, but they can't let it come free because it's too frightening to let it come free. And they say, the story is true, and so we were betrayed. But not only were we betrayed by a man, we were also betrayed by the man's God, okay? Because he always talked, people don't realize this today. Hitler talked about God all the time when he was coming up. He spent 20 years talking about that he wasn't the one who was to come, but he was serving Jesus Christ, and he was serving God, and he was only a servant, and all he was doing was beating the drum to say, someone is coming behind me. And he always talked about providence in his speech and the will of God and the will of God for Germany. And it's how he phrased it, but now we don't hear that anymore. Those speeches we don't hear anymore, okay? So not only was the German betrayed, and think of it as a woman again, not only was the German betrayed by a lover, but also by the lover's God. So today, about 1.8% of Germans actually know anything about God. They know about, they're members of a Lutheran church, or they're members of a Catholic church, or a few of them have an evangelical background, but it means nothing to their life because the betrayal also came in that realm. So that's the situation we have today. And here's one old man, a very old man, who, you know, I got off the plane this time, and I had, you know, please forgive me for it, but at least I had to get me a roll stool, because I actually had to have help to get to baggage. I had to have help to get to the car. And yet I'm here. And tomorrow night I'll be somewhere else, and tomorrow night I'll be somewhere else. And you know, it goes on with long drives, and I'm hoping somebody feeds me. But I have to be here, because God is all about truth. And there is truth. You know, lies have many, many faces, okay? They look this way, and they look this way, and they look pretty, and they do this. But something's wrong with lies, because it doesn't resonate in your heart. You say, I don't know what it is. It sounds great, but something's not right. But truth only has one face, just one. And it's the same way with love, you know. God is love. And so if you're afraid of God, or you're unsure of God, or you can't trust God, then of course you go to church on Easter or on Christmas or something, but it means nothing to you. You might as well be going to a restaurant. It has no meaning to you. That's the way that Germans protect themselves. It doesn't mean anything. So the German's mind, from the eyebrows up, is overdeveloped, and their heart is starved. I mean, I take my hands like this, and I say, the German heart, which was once open and generous, the heart, okay, was cauterized by fire and betrayal, and it pulled in, and it actually is almost painful how tightly it's held. And they're terrified to peek it open. Terrified. So I have to say to them, you can trust me, because I'm in love with you, and I can't harm you. It's impossible for me to harm you. Okay? So, and it's amazing, in meetings people will actually come up and sometimes they hug me, and they hold on so tight, you know. And you know, it's funny, if you're a 65-year-old man and you get a hug, it's lecherous. It's not good. But if you're a 77-year-old man and you get a hug, it's cute. So it's okay, you know, because he's so old he can't do anything anyhow. Yeah. So
I understand, and that's
So anyhow, that's the situation that we have. We have a beautiful young woman who was idealistic, and she gave herself entirely, everything that was precious to her. She said, here, because I don't just love you as a man, I love you as a way of life. I love you as the smell of the ground and the mountains and the streams and everything that has to do with Deutschtum, okay? I'm in love with it, and you represent it better than any other human being. You represent it.
I think what you describe is, we had this German, which is Austria, of course, also. In that time, it was one. And we had this German romanticism. We had Schiller, and we had those, also in the paintings, yes, about love, about the longing of love, about the yearning. And what you said, very female, very hard, from the heart, and very perhaps naive. I'm not innocent. I would call it innocent.
Innocent is good.
Very innocent. And that was before. You did describe what came afterwards, because before you had a young man who yearned for love, like Schiller, and a young woman who was ready to be loved in all her innocence. And then came the first dark feeling, when what you describe, the woman is still innocent, and she gives all her love, but she gives it to the wrong, somebody who captured her who it's a rapture. It's some sort of this rapture, which we also know from the arts, the Raub der Sabinerinnen, the rapture of the Sabinerinnen. I don't know how do you call it in English, but anyway, this rapture. And then afterwards came the one who said, "Oh, I will save you, the British, the Americans. I will save you." And this woman is still, perhaps she's a little bit older now, but she's still captured. She's still raptured, captured more than before. And then you have some sort of Zweckgemeinschaft, what you described. You give in and say, okay, he gives me chewing gum and security and my children. I mean, it's not so negative. Actually, I understand. After the war, you are glad when you are protected. But now it's overprotected, or at least the woman sees that. What does the protector? He puts away your male, the man, Rheinwiesen and everything. We talked about Bletchley Park, I think, enough, and also the Rheinwiesen, which is a castration of the real man who cannot protect anymore the woman. And I think what we get now is the delivery, the confinement. Delivery is also, you deliver something that's still in the orbit, but now it has to be delivered. And you once said that you were a watchman. And I think when you get to be, does it say confined or delivered? Yeah, when you deliver your baby, I mean, then you need to have a watchman. If the space is not protected, nothing can be delivered. And I think that's where we are now. And you are talking to the heart directly, and also to the female, in the man and in the woman, the female power. And you say it's the female that guides us out of this dilemma, out of this, yes. And I think now it's the time, but there are so many who are so distrusting you, who are so saying, oh my God, he's telling us something which is not good, and they are so full of fear, but also I think of an identity with their pain, with the pain body, with their confinement, oh my God, that's not right, okay, with their, which all that restricted them. They are so identified with that, that they say, oh no, William told, no, he's not good. So they reject the love, they reject also the aid they become, or the way out. I think that's what I want to say. And I think the way out is exactly, as you say, it's the female, in the man and in the women. Because at the moment, I mean, we cannot say that any man can. It's not about fighting anymore. It's about heart. It's about.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's growing up. The romanticism is growing up, and perhaps Austria is the woman and Germany is the man. Perhaps we have that also there a little bit. But I think now it's a grown-up love. It's a grown-up love where you have to love yourself to be able to be in a real partnership, in a real love. Emotionally grow up.
Yes.
I think isn't it you said that once, that the German have to grow up emotionally?
Yes, they're retarded emotionally.
Yeah.
They're still backward emotionally. They're unable to absorb the shocks of life, and so they have to live in a world that isn't real. In a way, they're still in a straitjacket. You know, when you go to they put the jacket on backward, so that you cannot move, and there's, the problem is it has now been so long. From Bletchley Park, and of course the Rheinwiesenlager was so hidden from everyone, they didn't even know it existed. Here's 800,000 40% young children who are murdered, and nobody even knows it. They're not allowed to know it, and they're not allowed to ask questions. But now the word Rheinwiesenlager can be mentioned in Berlin or Munich or Hamburg, and people say, yeah, I know about that. That was a tragedy. But 2 years ago, they didn't even know it existed, and you talk about the period after the war. The war ends on May 9th of 1945, supposedly. But between then and the end of 1948, there were over 2 million Germans and Austrians who died. of exposure. I mean, they have terrible winter, and we had a terrible summer, and there was no sanitary, no place to go to the bathroom. Many people had no place to get out of the cold or out of the heat, and over 2 million. That's conservative. It's actually closer to 2.5 million. But no one cared that they died because they were German. That had no meaning, because in the news story, Germans aren't real people. They're not people you would be concerned about. And this is critical now to the young woman. And how do we now get her back where she can open her arms again? Okay. The reason that Germans were allowed to die after the war, en masse, was because they had it coming. They deserved it, and everyone in the world knew it. So their lives meant nothing, whether they died or whether they lived. Good riddance to them. That's why these boys were allowed to die in that camp, slowly starving to death, and with pouring down rain and shivering and freezing. And they were allowed to die because they were German and no one wanted them. They were a different class of non-human people, and no one wanted them. So now we have that pain body you talk about. That has to be reversed, because why would you allow women and children who were thin and helpless and hungry, why would a normal man stand back and watch them be raped on the road from Silesia, from Pomerania, from Prussia? Why would a normal American soldier with a gun watch this take place in front of them day after day and never intervene? Why? Because these weren't real people anymore. They were Germans. And the word German is like the word offenkundig today for the story. Germans should die. It's natural that they die. And so we still are living with this pain that because we can't talk about it. And we have it locked up in our heart. And so how do we get love in when we're locked up still? And the obvious questions that, I've been teaching for, 34 years now. I've had students from 80 countries. Students have questions. They're curious. Germans have questions, but they too are locked up in the heart. They want answers, but they can't ask the questions, and they live in fear. And they're controlled by fear. And that is why when I go, I can't control how people think about me, but I have to be wide open and transparent. There can't be anything about me that is ever hidden. Okay? So, and I am sent for this purpose. Lisa and I have been married 34 years. And she knew from the first day, you have a purpose, and in the end, it has to end in a certain way. And that is, you must die that they may live. And she knew it, and I knew it, and so now the time is close, all right? But the only way Germans will be convinced to love again is if somebody is willing to give themselves without betrayal. That's why you've heard me say in dozens of meetings, I would rather die than betray a German. And that's any German, okay? So.
Yes, I understand very well. And we are on a turning point. We are on the turning point now to go to...
I'm sorry, excuse me.
To leave you some time so you can rest and concentrate. But I think we are also on a turning point now. As you always say, it can only happen when the time is ripe, when it's the time is to be turned around. That's a time quality. We are not talking about quantity. We are not talking about when will it happen. I don't mind when it will happen. I just can feel that the quality is that now it's on the turning point from the very male, very cold, very just thinking to the heart, to the female way out, which is of course the man and the woman, which is not something only for women. But now it's the turning point, and that's where the pain body is so ripe, it's so full that it cannot be held anymore. It cannot be held anymore, and it cannot be held by the Germans, and perhaps it cannot be held by the world neither, because there is too much guilt. And now it has to be reversed, and you are helping as a watchman, or we can also say, like my work also is some sort of what's the midwife? Yes, some sort of a midwife to help to turn it around. But it cannot be stopped, as Victor Hugo said. When the time is ripe, he said it. Otherwise, it's in Francais. But then it will happen, because nothing is more strong than an idea that the time is ripe. And,
yes, and we're now close. We're now close to that. I can feel it. I don't want to go through what I have to go through, but that's what I was born for. So I have to go through it, and if I could avoid it and go play golf, I would do so. But I can't. And I am deeply in love with a eternal sense of Germanness that is unchanging, and it does have its own beauty. Let me tell you one other thing, and then we'll have to stop because I do need time. But you know the young girl we talked about, the innocent young girl. Maybe she was 17 or 18 years old even, and she was full of idealism, and she wanted to be loved. She desperately wanted to be loved. And this man was the ideal lover for her, because he represented everything. It wasn't just that he had hair or eyes. He represented everything that she loved, okay? But she not only gave herself fully physically, but also she gave everything. And for years, she sacrificed her youth. She sacrificed everything. She said, I will go hungry. I will go with only one dress. I will go without stockings. I will be cold because I am deeply in love, and I will do anything. So she gave it all. And then when the new lover came, he said, it wasn't good enough. It wasn't good enough. Your old lover said it wasn't good enough. You weren't good enough. Well, can you imagine how that would crush the psyche?
The new lover collected the energy. The new lover came and collected all the energy.
Yeah. But she was never in love with the new lover, but she desperately needed the new lover in order to live, in order to survive.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes. So and then you have the shame also. She's ashamed because she gave it without love. So that's shame. I think it's a German shame also.
It is. Yeah. And she knew what she was doing, and she hated herself for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
She had self-hate for it. And Germans are still full of self-hate today. But they don't know what to do with it.
Yes.
And trust is the key. So what can I do? I have to keep coming. Why don't you just make videos? Videos. People can't touch me on a video. They can't come up and look at me on a video. They can't test me with their questions on a video. I have to come to them, and I have to go into their room, and I have to say, I am here for you to test. And if you find me to be false, then you will know. Then you're free. But maybe you won't find me to be false. And what if the story isn't true?
Yes, storytelling.
What if the storytelling isn't true?
Mm-hmm.
What if somebody made up a fiction novel and sold it to you as if it were history when it had no basis of fact whatsoever?
Yes.
Well,
and you may say that, and no German would have. People often say, "Well, you are not German. You don't speak German." Well, nobody in Germany could have said what you have said. I mean, you gave us the story, not the story. You gave us the facts about Bletchley Park, and I knew something about it, but I was very, very curious, and so I got. And even me, as being half Belgian and half Austrian, I can say more, but not altogether. But what you bring is healing. I think, and I try my best to in my work too, and also self-forgiveness. To know it's okay, there was no other possibility, and to be soft with oneself and forgiving oneself, and to open up the heart again, to give in the faith again, not to some, I don't know, man or whatever, but in life and in God and in oneself, I would say.
Yes.
What do you say? Is that a good way to finish our conversation?
Yes, I think so. We have to go step by step. Because William can never be one who's looking for clicks on the internet.
Yes.
He cannot be involved in the sensational. Tonight people will ask me, William, tell us exactly what... nothing can happen before its time. Who I am is revealed only by a series of circumstances. The circumstances reveal all the questions that people have, okay? I can't get ahead of those circumstances because otherwise the story is twisted. Now we have an old twisted story and now we have a new twisted story. The Germans cannot handle that. They cannot be betrayed this time.
Yes.
Okay.
You're right. May I hug you?
Of course, I would like that.
I'm so glad, William. I thank you.
Yeah.
I'm so glad, and we say goodbye.
Okay.
to those who watch us, and now you will have your big speech, your important speech.